We have once again reached the peak of what is commonly referred to as the Fujimoto cycle, because last chapter and this chapter are once again going to be revolutionary impacts to the story and plot as a whole. And I have no idea how Fujimoto continues to come up with such grand revelations of character in what seems like such sometimes unknown plot lines that are currently going on. Like, who would have thought that the rematch between the Falling Devil would end up with not only Yoru as a war devil becoming more powerful than a primal fear, to the point that she is literally just able to reduce the primal fear to close. She just straight up manipulates the existence of a primal fear itself, which not only is a huge testament to the amount of power that Yoru now holds, is not the way that I saw any of this going whatsoever. Because what seems to be the next couple of chapters are going to surround Denji now separating from Yoru. Because it's possible that with the Fire Devil's ultimatum, this is going to be what that decision comes down to. Is he going to be willing to kill Yoru, knowing that Asa will also die, the person that loves him more than anything, to save the world? Or vice versa? Is Denji going to make a mistake again? Because clearly, from this point on, Yoru is going to be taking the reins as a villain-like character. With the reveal that America has reinvented nuclear weapons, Yoru, now remembering that nuclear weapons were her favorite devil, where her strongest powers come from, mankind has finally redeveloped the power that allows them to defeat primal fears. So, Yoru recalls that with all of this new information and remembering how powerful nuclear weapons are, she no longer loves Denji. That was never her ultimate favorite thing in the world. What is her favorite thing in the world is America, which is just absolutely some of the craziest shit that I have seen in my entire life, and makes me think that Fujimoto sometimes has been crafting part 2 like South Park does, where they just kind of go with current events with all of the previous protests going on, and then we had the Statue of Liberty, and now we're just going full on America is the baddie. Because holy crap, the fact that Yoru says that America single-handedly made her so powerful, so terrifying, because of the amount of war they cause. And what happens from war? Death. By all of the horsemen slowly becoming more and more powerful, they are eventually bringing about the apocalypse and bringing about death's ultimate final solution. If you really think about it, and you also analyze the Chainsaw Man story with the idea of the four horsemen. Control, Makima was the very first main villain of part 1, and even though she's no longer around, her presence of control can be felt almost everywhere, right? Makima was one of the biggest heads of Japanese public safety, and public safety is still a force and organization that exists to this day, of not necessarily government overreach, but showing how people in high places in suits are calling the shots of entire countries sometimes from the shadows, as we saw with the aging devil, and how public safety was planning on erasing certain things and evolutionizing, if that's even a word, humans against everyone else's will. Control is still very much present, even though Makima herself and Nayuta, for all intents and purposes, is gone. We have the War Devil, which war has been going higher and getting more rampant over the course of part 2 as more and more things have been going out of whack. Because remember, I know a lot of people think that the nuclear weapons and all of that stuff is coming out of nowhere. However, if you slowly look back on the developing background of Chainsaw Man's world, with the Falling Devil causing gravity that caused massive death, massive famine, and massive issues and poverty across the entire world. You also have the Chainsaw Man Church having all of its members across the entire world causing political violence and causing outright riots, and the city of Tokyo or Japan, wherever Yoru and Denji are right now, is like barely operational. Like everything is falling apart. And in the peak of this war, America ended up creating something that, without even realizing it, is something that they already had created: nuclear weapons. And we see what happens because of that, as Yoru is slowly absorbing and increasing in power and beginning to wear the clothes that she just made out of the falling devil, we see the effects of what war and America has done to the world, what nuclear weapons can cause, and the amount of death and destruction that is caused. And as Yoru powers up, we see how, just like Control ultimately led to this dysfunctional society that was so easily ripped apart and torn to shred by devils, the illusion of control, one should say, because Makima, even as the control devil, had her own ulterior motives. We also have Famine, the real Famine, returning as of all of this crazy stuff that's happening in the background of Chainsaw Man's world, which is important to realize. Famine may be weak right now, but it is still important that Famine was recreated in the world, because quite literally, she is the one step before death. Mass starvation and mass famine across the entire world. So while she's weak now, she's only going to get more powerful, especially with the reveal that Yoru has just leveled up and almost reached her full potential with what is seen. Because what's going to happen after war? We see the survivors trying to pick themselves out of the rubble in one of these panels here. What's going to happen of all these cities, and what's going to happen of all these people that do survive nuclear war, and all these places that have to do their best to re-pick up society? There's going to be starvation. There's going to be hunger. Famine is going to rise up in power. And then once Famine reaches her peak, it's very clear that death will, at the end of the day, be forced to reach her peak as well. Because without a doubt, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, you've got Control, War, Famine, all three create nothing but death, 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 until death cannot contain any of its power. And we know that seems to be the case, because following up what might be one of the craziest power-ups and one of the most insane representations of American war and American imperialism empowering a devil is followed by Death calling herself Little D. Just Fujimoto. No one does it like Fujimoto, to say the least. But we know Death does not want to enact the apocalypse. Death, ironically enough, loves life, loves eating food, and loves hanging out with friends at school, and just loves all of the small details of life. She does not want to reach her peak potential, and it seems like she can't even stop it once it happens. She's tried to kill herself, and it hasn't worked for her. So, sure, sending Falling after Denji and Yoru, and also sending Famine out to reach her full potential was Death's idea.
This video is sponsored by GamerSupps, the ultimate energy and focus formula. GamerSupps is an awesome drink made up of a bunch of vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin D3, B6, B12, and vitamin H. All super good for you and your health, so it's not one of those awful sugar-filled concoctions that's gonna make you crash after drinking it. If you're still skeptical about it, go check out the link and use my code anyway. They are more than willing to send you some free samples and give you a chance to try their product for free. Use my code NOOP now for 10% off, and thank you GamerSupps for sponsoring the channel.
But based on Death meeting with Denji here in this like state of limbo, it makes me think that Death may be attempting to fast forward towards the end, but in fast forwarding towards the end, hopefully Denji or maybe other people that she can enlist with help will be strong enough to take down Yoru, who, in my opinion, has been set up from the very beginning to be the actual big bad of the series. Because when it comes down to it, Yoru discarding her feelings for Denji in efforts of loving America instead and loving the nuclear weapon devil that gives her this new transformation of power, while you could argue that, you know, Denji and Yoru and Asa, all of these dynamics and these relationship struggles that they've had, if Yoru was just going to throw it all away for nukes anyway, what does it amount to? But I think it's also important to remember that Yoru's character has been shown in a very certain way. From the very beginning, Yoru mentioned wanting Denji to puke up nuclear weapons, but not even just on the smallest reductionist point of that. I think it's also important to remember that during the battle with Yoru and Pochita, because remember, Yoru wants to defeat Chainsaw Man. Yoru, as the War Devil, wants to be the most powerful devil of all time. And as we've even seen Asa and Yoru kind of hint at earlier, before all of this fighting between the fake Chainsaw Man and Falling Devil happened, Asa said that what Yoru wants to do with her full potential is worse than what Death and the Apocalypse could ever bring about. So putting a pin in that note, Yoru, during the fight with Pochita, was more than willing to sacrifice the children she loved, Gun and Tank. Supposedly, what she told Asa in the bathtub when they were talking together and Yoru was actually opening up to Asa, Yoru revealed that she's doing this to avenge her comrades that were defeated by Chainsaw Man, to prove that the weapons of war are powerful devils that can defeat something as simple as the Chainsaw Man devil. How could they lose to the Chainsaw Man devil? How could the four horsemen, and as we see, Yoru, who was this powerful enough to make a primal fear bend to her will, how did they lose? And that was her big stain on her character. But at the end of the day, she was willing to throw all of that away in a moment's notice just so she could get the power to beat Chainsaw Man in the fight. Because without sacrificing gun and tank, she would not have been able to do the big gun goddess ability where she sacrificed the NRA fingers and pinkies to shoot that massive bullet from the Statue of Liberty. So not only was this America connection always kind of hinted at between Yoru, it goes very much in hand with, you know, again, just the idea of American imperialism and America being this big superpower that has just waged war for centuries now. Take it or feel about it how you will. I mean, you definitely can't deny, you know, America definitely is one of the strongest war powers in the world, if not the strongest. So Yoru getting and gaining power as the war devil from America and becoming a, you know, a staunch American nationalist makes sense to me. I think it makes absolute sense. And at the end of the day, her feelings for Denji were always mixed up with Asa's feelings, as Asa and Yoru's minds mixed together. However, it seems as of late that Asa and Yoru have kind of been separate for a while now. Mentally wise, even though they inhabit the same bodies, their minds have begun to become kind of independent, especially considering that Yoru was able to keep secrets from Asa. Asa was able to use Yoru's power against her will. These people that have slowly become intermingled have slowly begun to separate, because we see the staunch difference between Asa, who is at the end of the day a human, and Yoru, who is at the end of the day undeniably always has been a devil and always has had her love for Denji in this weird devil fashion, to the point that I honestly think that she was willing to give in to the affection of Denji because it made not only Asa stronger, it made her stronger. Asa, through her actual confession that she gives, where she does want to make Denji happy and does genuinely want to be with Denji in some degree, Asa's, you know, feelings for Denji helped her get the power to use her college fund savings to try and break Denji out. It gave her the power to level up and become that #1 popular devil hunter that was able to, you know, kill the Bee Devil, fight Yoshida back then. All of that was in response to Asa and Denji's relationship dynamics. And Asa grew as a person and grew in power, and in turn grew war because of this. And Yoru was more than happy to see that through to the end, because she also believed that she could create Denji into the ultimate weapon. But at the end of the day, Yoru, now with this new information, realized she doesn't need Denji. She doesn't need this Chainsaw Man weapon. She has nukes again. The only reason she needed Denji was because nukes didn't exist, and she also didn't remember how powerful nukes made her. Now, with this knowledge, she feels like she doesn't need Denji. However, this may be because Yoru's still working with missing information, which I think is important to remember. There's multiple ways this could go, but I'm ultimately excited to see where the story goes from here, because Yoru literally says just stay put and watch like a good girl as she goes to take all of her new powers to do whatever it is war Yoru wants to accomplish. And again, the chapter ends with Denji waking up in almost like a mental realm, the shadow realm, with little D, who reveals that she was never Fami and she is the Death Devil. And what Death and Denji are going to talk about, we are just going to have to wait and see next chapter, because again, with it seemingly going the route of Yoru being the main ultimate villain that we have to go up against, not actually Death. Fujimoto once again is subverting all of our expectations and taking the story in a way I don't think anyone could have predicted. Let me know your guys' thoughts about all of this in the comments. I'm genuinely excited to see what the community has to say, because I know this is definitely a controversial way for the story to go, because no one saw this one coming at all. But I honestly, I love Fujimoto for this sometimes. But guys, if you've been enjoying Chainsaw Man or just this video in general, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel way more than you know. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the future updates on Chainsaw Man that I'll be going over, because it's clear we have plenty of new story to be going into with these next couple of chapters. So don't miss that, and I'm excited to go on that journey with y'all. I'll see you guys in the next video. Be good, drink some water. Peace.